Hello and welcome. You are watching Last Tick here on News 9, where we bring to you the lowdown of the day's action on the last street. Now we have got lots to talk about, but the biggest news that's actually breaking out, the numbers have started coming in for TCS. The IT bellwether has in fact marginally surpassed the street's expectations. Revenue for the quarter has jumped about 1.1%, coming in at around 60,583 crore mark. Now this is a slight jump from the expectations. Profit figures are also slightly ahead of the expectations. They came in at around 12,016 crore, whereas the expectation was of around 11,300 300 crores or something. EBIT has also, earnings before interest, tax and depreciation, has also come in slightly ahead of the street's expectations. The figure comes in at around 15,155 crores for the quarter, and margins this time around have improved from about 24.4 basis points or 24 basis points or something to 25% this time around. But we'll bring you the latest on that as and when the numbers start trickling in. Also, Infosys is expected to declare its numbers anytime soon now. Both stocks ended rather in the positive in a very volatile session. Infosys, which by the way was down about 1% or so, saw a good bit of spike in the last 5-10 minutes of the session and ended in the green or with a flattish bias. TCS also ended about 0.4% higher in today's session. But looking at the overall rally, Indian markets also had a rather volatile session on Thursday, the weekly FNO expiry session for Nifty. However, the 50 share index did manage to close above 21,600 mark and extended its winning run to 3 sessions. Now both headliners, Nifty and Sensex, opened higher in today's session, with Nifty even surpassing 21,700 mark for a short while, and Sensex also came very close to surpassing the 72,000 levels. In fact, the day's high stands at around 71,999, so we were essentially there. But the bullish momentum after that initial burst up fizzled out pretty much, and the indices from there on moved sideways. Now around the 2 p.m. mark, like we have seen in the past few sessions, we saw a sharp movement on the index, both indexes in fact. And but this time the move was on the downside, which took Nifty momentarily below the 21,600 levels also. Now the recovery was equally swift, and the index did manage to settle above the 21,600 mark and close about 0.2% higher at 21,665 levels, whereas Sensex ended about 70-80 points higher at around 71,798 mark. Now the broader markets, they continued their outperformance. Mid cap index ended about 0.5% higher, above the 47,250 mark, just shy about 9-10 points shy of the 47,300 mark, and the small cap index that closed about 26 points shy of its day's high, but it could not claim the 15,500 mark, which it had been struggling for the past few sessions. India VIX also ended below 13 levels. India VIX settled about 1% lower at 12.83%, at 12.83 sort of levels. Now this is setting aside the January 5th closing. This was only the second session where the index has managed to close below 13 levels in over a month. And it's a sharp contrast from 16 sort of levels that we were seeing just a couple of weeks back. Now broadly speaking, the markets after a stellar run of November and December have largely been consolidating. Nifty, for instance, has been moving in a range of about 300 odd points since making a record high on January 1 between 21,450 and 21,750. This has also helped market recover from oversold zones. RSI, which is the relative strength indicator, for example, was near 80 sort of levels at the start of 2024. Currently, after today's mild uptick, it settled somewhere around 64-65 levels. So a big correction from the oversold levels. But what does it mean? Does it mean that the bullish momentum will finally resume, or bears are making a slow entry towards making an entry? And to understand what's exactly going on in the markets and break down the results that have come out, let's also bring on board Mr. Amar Deo Singh, Senior Vice President of Research at Angel One. Thank you for joining us here on Last Tick, Amar. I'll come to you with a big one first. TCS has come out with its numbers. on an initial scan, it looks like the numbers are slightly ahead of what the street was expecting. What's your outtake on TCS's Q3 result?
Yeah, I would say that as per the expectations, I think it's slightly on the positive side, and that's the reason we did see. If you look at TCS and Infosys today, TCS managed to close in the green. But overall, I would say analysts and investors, they would be looking at what's going forward, the forward-looking statements by the management as to the management commentary as to how they foresee the coming quarters, because that's going to be very important in terms of the budgets, technology budgets of clients, how that's going to shape up in terms of the discretionary spending, how that's going to happen. Because generally for this October, December, what we see is that more of a tepid, I would say, period for them. But it was on expected lines, I would say. And if we look at TCS going forward, it would also have to come up with how because it's focusing on two major themes like AI and cloud adoption. So how those themes are actually going to play out, because that's an area, I would say, area where there is a huge opportunity in terms of business opportunities as well. So the management commentary is something that will definitely be the center or the focal point which analysts would be paying attention to.
And Infosys results are also expected to come out, but just let us run through the numbers that have come out for TCS first. TCS's net profit for the quarter ended December has gone up by about 6% or so. That sits at around 12,016 crore versus 11,352 crore in the year ago period. Revenue, in fact, on a quarter-on-quarter basis, so these are sequential numbers. Revenue also saw a 1.5% jump in the quarter-on-quarter. Revenue has jumped by to about 60,583 crores from 59,690 crores in the previous quarter. Operating profit margin, now that has improved by about 70 basis points to 25% from 24.3% in the September quarter. But Amar, coming back to you, last time we spoke, you were not too bullish on Infosys. I think Infosys was one of the stock that has not in fact performed in the course of the year. It's about flattish, whereas other stocks have given returns of about 12 to 20%. Nifty IT on the whole has risen by about 20-21% in 2023. What's your outlook on Infosys now, and what kind of numbers are you expecting?
Looking at Infosys, again, Infosys is expected to report subdued numbers only. I don't see anything very different coming, and it could be, I would say, marginal. If there's a rise also, there would be very marginal. Otherwise, it could be more of a tepid sort of numbers. And the markets are also factoring. See, the markets actually gave the IT companies a thumbs up because of the US, I would say, US Fed's approach towards a dovish approach, that there would be more rate cuts, and the rate cuts could come sooner, and that could be helpful for the US economy, and then the restrain the client technology budgets and all that would expand. So these were the assumptions, or these were the beliefs which really helped the IT companies move up significantly. And as far as Infosys, if I look at on the long-term charts also, you remember I had said that it's a complete range-bound play. So it's not much of a positive figure in that sense. TCS anyways is better placed technically also on the long-term charts, whereas Infosys is more of a range place. We'll have to watch out for the numbers, and also I would say the numbers. See, it's again going to be how the management actually conveys as to going forward, what are their plans, how they foresee the next coming quarter, because generally October December quarter is a weak quarter in terms of the festive seasons and in the West. So I would say that we'll have to wait and watch. But yes, on any significant correction, one can look at a buying opportunity in Infosys as well, because that gives an opportunity of so anywhere between, currently it's around 1500 levels, anywhere between 1350 1400 level. That's a good opportunity where the stock finds very strong support and then bounces back. So between 1300 and 1600, that's the range that I see. If you ask me technically, long-term charts are completely flat for Infosys, whereas they are better placed in terms of TCS.
All right, and back in October, JP Morgan had come out with a report calling it FY24 to be a washout year for the IT companies. Is that prediction coming true, sir?
I would say going by the numbers, because we'll also have to remember that even if the major IT companies are able to sustain, that itself is a big achievement, because you also have to look at that it's not only these companies, the major sources of revenue are from the US and Europe. So how and we know what's happening in the US economy or the European economy. So that's okay if they are able to manage and maintain at least their levels which are there.
All right, and what's your overall view on the market? We have been consolidating in a range of about 300 points on Nifty from 21,450 to 21,750. But, we have also been making lower highs and lower lows. Is this, a bearish pivot that the market is now looking at?
So if you look at the markets clearly, they are telling me that they are clearly indicating that somewhere or the other, there is this resistance at higher levels. So markets are being sold into at higher levels. That is very clearly evident, and we can look from that higher levels would be sold into, and again Nifty would be finding resistance around the 21,650, 21,750 zone. So that's a zone of resistance for Nifty. So I would say that it's more of a range right now. Higher levels are being sold into 21,300, 400. That's a very strong support zone. 21,700, 800. That's a very strong resistance zone. If you ask me technically, from a short-term perspective, it's clear consolidation. But the medium-term, long-term trend, the intermediate term trend is very strong. Long-term trend is also positive. So one should not be in a hurry to short. But yeah, it's more of a trading range as of now for the major indices.
All right. And if there is a breakout, on which side do you expect? Do you expect it to break out on the lower side of the range or the higher side?
I would say that that would depend primarily on the way, because what we are seeing on the daily charts clearly tells me that there is some sort of selling pressure which is there. But I would still be on the buying side, because I see that the trend, there is no major trend change or an indication that the trend is likely to change. So being on the long side is more appropriate, but you have to be slightly cautious at the current levels because markets are in a consolidation zone from a short-term perspective.
All right, and Amar, before we let you go, in 2023, we saw a lot of themes play out, PSUs, realty, to name a few. And when the sectors were rallying, almost all constituent stocks were also rallying. Do you think now, since we have a lot of binary events, a lot of uncertainties, especially in 2024, it's time to take a more of a bottom-up approach?
I would say stock picking this year definitely would be more challenging as compared to what it was last year. There's no doubt about it. So one definitely needs to be, I would say, more circumspect in terms of looking at stocks, because you also have to look at the valuations. One. Secondly, you also have to look at the sectors, because if you look at major sectors, be it infra, be it auto, be it financials, be it pharma, be it real estate, these sectors have really performed exceedingly well. So it will be more of a stock picking with being circumspect and waiting for opportunities to buy on any corrections.
All right, that's the view coming in from Amar Deo Singh. Sir, thank you for joining us here on Last Week. Appreciate your time, appreciate your thoughts. But I'm made to understand the numbers of Infosys are also out. The net profit figure for this quarter stands at around 6,100 crore. Now this is slightly ahead of what the street was expecting. Street had pegged the figure to come in somewhere around the 6,000 crore to 6,050 crore mark. So not a big jump, but the numbers will keep on trickling in, and we'll get you the latest on that. But that's all we have in this edition of Classic. Thank you for watching news. Thank you for watching.
Ram's Ayodhya rebuilt. Ram Lala's Pran Pratishtha. Countdown to January 22nd. Dateline Ayodhya. Catch the mega coverage only on News9 Live.
You're watching Business Plus. We're bringing you stories from the world of business policy and economy. First up, let's begin with headlines. India set to be world's third largest economy by 2028, on course to achieve a GDP of $30 trillion by 2047, says Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman at the Vibrant Gujarat Summit. And the Vibrant Gujarat Summit 2024 sees industrialists lining up to invest in the western state. Ambani to Adani commit to huge investments in renewable green energy to semiconductor space. And SpiceJet has exclusive rights for Lakshadweep, will be launching flights to Agathi Island very soon, says Chairman and MD Ajay Singh. Boeing CEO fights back tears, admits mistake in the 737 address, commits to complete transparency after the major safety incident. In a game changer in the world of Bitcoin, the US Securities and Exchange Commission approves exchange-traded funds that invest directly in Bitcoin. The landmark judgment will broaden access to the cryptocurrency market. All those stories we are tracking here on News9. Karthik Malhotra with me in the studio. Karthik, hello. The top story that we are tracking coming, by the way, what's happening in Gujarat at the moment, where throngs of industrialists, entrepreneurs, the biggest newsmakers and the names are currently in Gujarat. They are either sharing what is going to be in order from their companies or talking about plans to build Gujarat and build India in turn. Just yesterday, we saw Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman actually detailing as to what her plans are for the country and how India is on course to achieve that 30 trillion GDP mark by 2047.
Absolutely. So I think just prior to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman taking stage, you also had Mukesh Ambani, and Mukesh Ambani in fact had set a higher target for India's GDP, saying that India will be a $35 trillion economy by 2047. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman being a little more realistic and saying that 30 trillion is a more likely scenario by 2047. In addition to that, of course, the $5 trillion plans which have been in the making and have been elusive for the last 5 years or so are likely to come through by the year 27-28. So India is obviously then going to be the third largest economy in the world. It's nothing new. It's not something that we haven't spoken about earlier. It's not something that analysts have not spoken about earlier. But Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman giving a definitive dateline saying that FY28 by when India will become a $5 trillion economy is a certainty.
And numbers are lining up, come to think of it. We are close to $4 trillion at the moment.
We are already a $3.7 trillion economy.
3.8 when we last heard.
Yeah, so 3.75 or then near about. So even if we grow at a 7%, marginal rate 7%, which is lower than the Statistical Office has released and the Ministry of Statistics has released, and lower than the expectation of 7.2% that the RBI has also released, then we are likely to definitely be a $4 trillion economy by the end of this financial year.
Absolutely. The numbers are realistic. Before we delve deeper into them, let's quickly quickly listen in to what Nirmala Sitharaman had to say.
Looking at development as being a partnership where you leverage the strength of the state and look at strengthening those challenges, in the sense get over the challenges and make them strengths for the states. Therefore, I call it a partnership between the center and states. So this participatory approach is what gives us the language for thinking about how India can be reaching that target through the Amrit Kal, the 25 years between now and 47, that we can reach to build a developed India, not just in terms of what will be reached, $30 trillion by 2047, but also with the 30 trillion inclusive, empowering growth for all citizens. So Vikasit Bharat agenda is a comprehensive vision plan which is being developed by Government of India. I appreciate the effort of the state in getting this already on board.
The Viksit Bharat agenda, inclusive growth. I think inclusive growth has been one of the cornerstones of this government's promise to develop country. 30 trillion is the number intact. That is going to be in sight every time a new policy is rolled out. This is a very crucial time. You know, this is coming right ahead of those crucial 2-3 months buffer that the current government has before it goes to election. Just at least about 20 days before the interim budget would be out, which is going to set stage for what's to come in the next 5 years.
I don't know whether the interim budget is actually going to set stage for anything substantial when you talk about a long-term India perspective, and we'll have to wait for the new government to take office and the real budget to be announced. But I think inclusive development, yes. And what FM was talking about, the partnership between states and centre, definitely yes, there has been positive movement in that direction. And on inclusiveness, overall, I think the direct beneficiary transfers, the DBT scheme, overall financial inclusion by way of the Jan Dhan accounts that have been opened, banking the unbanked, these are obviously great credits to the BJP government, great credit to the overall financial ecosystem architecture that has been built in India over the last 1 decade or so. But I think the problem still lies, and the core of the problem lies with the fact that even at $30 trillion in 2047, what is the per capita GDP? I think at some level we will have to stop comparing ourselves to countries like Germany and Japan, which are much smaller in the number of people that they house, much smaller in the overall land available to them, and India being a much larger economy. 30 trillion translating down to the per capita income of still being in the range of about $2,600 or so per citizen per year is way too small compared to, let's say, US, which is right now at about $26 trillion, lesser than what India is likely to be by 2047. Boasting of a per capita income of about $80,000. China, on the other hand, already has a per capita GDP 6 times that of India at about $12,000, despite having almost the same number of people as India has. So I think every time we talk about these big headline GDP numbers, GDP as a whole being the third largest, second largest, first largest is all right, but it has to translate to per capita GDP. And that, for a country housing the number of people we do, 1.4 billion and counting, is going to be a far cry for India.
Absolutely, at about $2,000 per capita GDP, not there just as yet when compared to other countries who are at the top of the chart. True. As far as their growth rate is concerned, but promising a growth rate of at least 7.3% this financial year. These are some headline numbers that sound very, very good, but the promise is a bit elusive of Viksit Bharat. Government there, of course, trying its best to ensure that the policy framework is supporting that vision. But as far as vision for Gujarat is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of industrialists are currently in Gujarat. They are going to be in Gujarat for the next 2 days as Vibrant Gujarat Summit kick-started yesterday with Prime Minister Modi